Give the audience who doesn't know your background.
I was born in Iran
Yep.
in 1972, which makes me 50, which is insane.
Mashallah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My family was, like an upper middle class family, landowning family, big, large, tribal family. My father was a kind of a troublemaker, communist leanings. Today,
Really?
exactly. Yeah. But like college today, the way that all college kids are sort of communist. Do you know?
Just so you know, my family too.
Yeah.
So my mother said. So today, if you want to share with the audience what today is.
So today was the primary communist party in Iran in the 1970s, and it actually had a massive role in the success of the 1979 revolution that got rid of the Shah, and that eventually, about a little less than a year later, replaced the Shah with Khomeini, whose first act was to get rid of all the communists.
Which is kind of crazy. They thought they were going to make it better for 2 days, but it got worse for them.
They thought they could control the religious fanatics, and if there's not a lesson there, then you're not paying attention, right? I think the Communist Party, they were the intellectuals of the movement. They gave the movement teeth, and they helped I think, less politically minded people understand exactly what was at stake in this revolution. But in the end, it's the religious leaders who have the ability to bring people out onto the streets, right? Ideas don't go anywhere if there aren't thousands of people willing to risk their bodies in order to implement those ideas. And so it was this weird marriage of convenience to begin with, right? These like secularists, mainly atheists, intellectuals and communists, and the religious, pious masses. They married together to get rid of the Shah, but then as soon as the Shah was gone, the cracks in that relationship very quickly formed. And I remember very clearly my father one morning, at least from my 7-year-old perspective, very suddenly saying, "It's time to go. We got to go right now."
What year?
This was 79. So
you left in 79. Okay.
Left in 79. So we left after the Shah left after Khomeini arrived.
Where did you
Khomeini had
live?
already
Where
arrived.
did you live? Like, where in Iran did you live?
In Tehran.
What part of Tehran?
Oh, we were in the north.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got it.
Nice
area.
Yeah, we were the nicer area. We had things
Gandhi.
to lose.
What city would you say if you're in the Gandhi area? Like what area? Do you remember the area or no?
I don't remember the exact.
There was an area like if you lived in the north, you're like to say what would be the it's like saying you lived in Beverly Hills type of area. Maybe not Beverly Hills, but it's like to say you live in a good area.
Yeah. Well, I will say that like those people, the very rich people, they got the message way before anybody else
73,
did.
74,
They all got out with their Swiss bank accounts intact.
Have you been back to Iran since you left in 79?
Just once. I went back in 2005 before I was anyone, and when I could just kind of sneak under the radar.
Yeah.
This was right after Ahmadinejad became president.
Good timing.
So it was a crazy time, and I went back for about 8-9 weeks on a research trip, but also to see my family, to see my home, and just to kind of see what the place was like. That's probably the last time I'll get to see Iran.
What would happen if you went back now, and what do you think would happen if someone like Pat would go back now? Because that's a lifelong dream of his. I just don't know the reality of it.
I think that if I went back now, I would probably be never heard from again. I'd probably disappear at the airport. I think if Pat went back now, he would be welcomed with open arms, and then someone would knock on his door a few days later and say, "You sent a text, and that text makes you a spy. Come with us."
Does there need to be any justification for them, taking you away, or is it just that the theocrats are just going to come get you, and that's just how it works?
See, here's the awful truth about Iran is that there are a lot of ways that we could label it, that it's a theocratic regime, or that it's a fascist regime, or that it's like a military regime. But the truth of the matter is that, like most autocratic states, it's impossible to really know who's in charge of what, right? The person in charge of your life is the guy on the other side of the desk. You know, if he's
The bureaucrat.
Yeah, if he's had a nice lunch and you know, had a nice conversation with his wife, then maybe you're okay. If he had a fight with his wife, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can point to the law to say, but that's not how it works, right? In countries like Iran, the law is whatever the person in front of you says the law is. And that makes these kinds of situations very difficult. So when an American citizen of Iranian heritage, which happens quite often, gets arrested and accused of these sort of very vaguely worded crimes, it's very hard for the American government to kind of do anything legally to support them because the law is such an absolute mess over there. Is there a law in Iran, an established constitutional law that provides for a fair judicial process for anyone committed who is allegedly committed a crime? Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone pay any attention to that? No. I mean, you could appeal to it, but people just sort of laugh at you. That's the problem with not just Iran, but all of these sort of autocratic states.
Please go back to the upbringing. So I'm tracking all of it. Dad, 2 day, is kind of a rebel like the younger ones. Like, you know, 2 days in a movie theater, you would stand up to kind of give recognition to the Shah, and 2 days wouldn't stand up. Like they were rebels. They were like stuff like that. Yeah. And then go ahead, continue. We're listening. So 7 years old, you guys, your dad says we got to get out of here. 79. Right before Khomeini, right after Shah, you guys leave, you come to the States.
Yeah, and I think for my dad too, people forget that when Khomeini, when Khomeini returned,
just so you know, to Americans, it's the same thing.
It's the same guy,
but to us, it's different.
Yes, no,
Yeah,
the OG,
the OG,
yeah,
Khomeini and Khomeini. It's very nuanced. You got that, Rob? It's Khomeini.
By the way, he corrected
Khomeini.
himself. When he corrected himself, Americans are like, "What is he doing?"
Please, thank you for emphasizing that extra high.
But there's a big difference.
Yes,
Khomeini's the OG.
Say it.
The OG.
Would you for us gringo Americans pronounce the different name?
Khomeini, you fucking me up.
I got you.
Stop it.
I got you.
Stop it. Khomeini was the founder of the Islamic Republic and the guy who invented the very idea of the supreme leader. Khamenei is the current supreme leader.
Gotcha. So say the two names back to back.
Khamenei.
Two totally separate words.
It is.
Exactly.
Doesn't sound anything alike.
Anyway, the point is that, you know, when he came back, I think people don't remember this. When he returned from exile in Iran, there's millions of people came out, you know, to sort of welcome him as the savior of the new Iran. He very publicly announced that he wanted nothing to do with politics, that he had no interest in government, that, you know, he was happy that the Shah was gone, but he just wanted to be left alone. He wanted to go back to his home and to his family and to his mosque and to his studies. And my dad, who never trusted anything anyone wearing a turban had to say on any subject, just thought, bullshit. Like, I don't believe that for a minute. And so, just in case, let's grab some things and go. And if it does turn out okay, we'll come back. You know, let's just leave for a little bit. So that's what it was. It was really an emergency thing. You know, wake up in the morning, grab some things, put it in a suitcase. We're going to just leave for a little while. And that was obviously.
Where'd you guys go to? Did you go straight here, or did you go like to Spain and then you came here? Was it like a inner?
There was a brief stop in London for a lot of Iranians checking out. London was like stop number one. But then funny for us, our destination in the United States was Oklahoma. Was Enid, Oklahoma. And to this day, I can't tell you exactly why. My theory is that when my dad was in college, he did like a semester abroad at a university in Oklahoma. I think in Edmonton, I believe. I don't remember. Eastern Oklahoma. I'm sorry, Oklahomans, that I'm unaware of your geography.
Just throw them under the bus.
And I think he just thought, well, that's America. Like, that's Oklahoma is America. And
Breadbasket.
So if we go to America, then we're going to land in Oklahoma. Which, by the way, he's right in a lot of ways. But it only took us about a year to realize, there's so much more about America. And so, like so many Iranians, we headed west and ended up in California, but in Northern California, not in Southern California. Different Iranian diaspora.
Where?
In the Bay Area.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big community there.
Well, it's like two different communities. So the first Iranians who fled, the wealthy ones who like took their money with them, all settled in Los Angeles. And so there's a reason we call LA Terrangeles, you know. But then the sort of intellectuals, the second wave, the post-revolution people who got out, they all settled in the Bay Area. So it's a vastly different community in California, the Northern California Iranians and the Southern California Iranians.
So, but for today to escape, to leave and escape, that doesn't make sense though, because I'm assuming your dad was not a fan of the Shah, right?
No, he was not a fan of the Shah.
So how? That is a very strange. Kudos to your dad, by the way, for making that decision. But
the foreknowledge, yeah,
because that doesn't make sense, though. That doesn't make, because the level of hate 2 days had for the Shah was so massive, that they all wanted anything but the Shah. Because obviously, you know, the whole look how rich he is. Look at the 2,500-year celebration he put together. Anything is better than the Shah.
Was the thought.
Well, I'm surprised that he left.
I think for my dad, the 2-day politics was married to a real anti-religious, hardcore atheist
materialism
view. Yeah, like I always joke that my dad was the kind of atheist who always had a pocket full of Prophet Muhammad jokes that he would pull out at inappropriate times. You know what I mean? Like he was a very kind of virulently anti-religious person.
How old were you the first time you read Communist Manifesto? Really? I'm actually curious.
I mean, honestly, it was probably not until I was like 13, 14.
Okay, so you read it here. You didn't read it in Iran.
No.
That was like the Bible, you know, for 2-day party. You know, you had to read that to get an understanding about bourgeoisie and, you know, all the other guys. Anyways, okay, so your religious ideology, like how religious beliefs, you've kind of gone through a little bit of, if you don't mind sharing that with the audience.
Well, so, you know, we grew up culturally Muslim, the way that so many people are culturally religious around the world. It was just kind of part of who we were. It was part of our identity. And, you know, we would go through the rituals and the holidays and all that stuff. But when we came to the U.S., I think my father thought, well, now we don't even have to pretend anymore. Like we don't have to pay lip service to any of that. You know, we'll put the Quran away and roll up the prayer rugs, and that's the end of that. My mother, you know, was raised a little bit differently. She was raised primarily by by her grandmother. Her parents were famous actors, you know, in Iran, which in Iran is kind of another way of saying prostitute. And so she basically raised by
just so you know, he's right.
She was basically raised by her very strict grandmother. And so, you know, my mother would pray every once in a while, and you know, we would do some of the holidays, but the more we stayed in Iran, the more I grew up. In the U.S. The more I grew up in the U.S., the more and more we systematically stripped our lives and our family of any kind of religiosity. But you have to understand, you know, I was 7 when my country was handed over to religious fanatics. And I remember it. I was there on the streets. I watched it happen. And it, I think, instilled in me at a very young age this deep fascination with religion and the power that religion has to transform a society for good and for bad, and the way that religion can be used as a way to make change, but to also identify yourself, to create groups and in-groups, out-groups. I got really fascinated by legends and mythologies. I was just a weird boy. Like, I was a weird boy. I was interested in religion, but in a family in which there was no place to really express that in any meaningful way.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.